Welcome to Pedersen and Partners, quick fireside chats with the world's leading authorities in media and marketing. Today, I'm joined by Dom Touchaud, who used to be with P&G for 17 years, worked globally, and was in charge of agency capabilities for Asia Pacific. Dom now has his own consultancy, Shokunin, where he works with other brands and agencies. Dominic, thank you for coming today. I understand you've already read the article, so I'd really appreciate your comments and views on that.
So when I was reading the article, it was really interesting because there's nothing I would disagree with, but I had two major comments on it. Is that the criteria you set out for successful in housing are perfectly correct. When I compare that with my personal experience, either direct experience at P&G or companies that I've known or worked very closely with, and if you apply this criteria, I have not seen to this day in housing that really worked. That would be my first, I would say, my first comment. It's not really about the article, but it's really comparing the article to my reality. So I haven't seen it work. And the other thing I'm always a bit surprised with is the numbers, the self-declared numbers that advertisers or that marketers are putting out there that make it seem as if in-housing had been completely embraced by the whole marketing ecosystem, or at least by the marketers. And again, what I've seen is a lot of companies, big companies, just testing the waters and dipping their toes, but not really embracing it. Let me give you a perspective. The fact that one P&G brand somewhere in the world has an in-house team doesn't mean that P&G is 100% having an in-house team. It is still a very small fraction of creative resources sourcing for a company like P&G.
What do you think is the perfect sort of mix for a company like P&G?
I think, well, large advertisers like P&G have a wide variety of needs. Some of these needs can be, I would say, automated. Some of these needs need more hardware than software. For me, the software being the people and the hardware being the whole programmatic and data side. And that is very easy for a company to bring back in-house, provided just for me, it's common sense. Marketers today should own their own data. When we talk about first-party data, I'm surprised that many marketers don't have a clue about the data that they have. So the fact that marketers have woken up to that and somehow think we should own and be able to manage our own data, for me, is pretty common sense. When we go down towards the creative side of the business, it becomes way more tricky to imagine that this can be in-housed because of a variety of factors. And myself having been an external hire at P&G, coming from the outside world and being an ex-agency guy, I stayed with P&G 17 years, out of which for about 10 years I was called the agency guy. So that tells you a lot about how difficult it is to penetrate a corporate culture in a company that has everything pretty much.
How did you go about doing that? It's interesting to have someone of your background and experience joining a P&G. Were you accepted, and how did you ingratiate into the network?
Well, the thing is that I was hired by P&G because I used to handle the P&G account at Saatchi. So I already knew the house. And remember, we're talking about a period when P&G agencies were on retainer. I was exclusive P&G, spending 20 hours a day, close, working on P&G brands. I knew the systems already. So I didn't have that cultural shock. I knew the thinking, I knew the systems. I just had to learn the personal connections and sort of, I would say, prove my worth, prove what I could bring to the party. And what I could bring to the party is that I had been between Saatchi and P&G, had been working for a couple of years with Swatch, which was a company where I would probably work on 60 different campaigns in a year when it took P&G 18 months to do one campaign. So that's what I was bringing to the party, a kind of approach to tell to my friends and colleagues, there's another way to do things, but doing it from the inside. I was not the agency guy trying to sell a product. I was trying to convince the internal teams that there was another way to do it, and also tell the agency, my credibility was also with the agency, so I could tell them, I've done it already, so I know it's feasible.
What do you think are the qualities required to work within an organization like a P&G or Unilever that made you so successful?
I would say somehow, I had that discussion with friends of mine, somehow you have to embrace the corporate culture. You have to be comfortable working in a company that has a very strong corporate culture. So you're not fighting the system. There's nobody with the hidden white knight fighting the system to change the company from the inside. You work within the system to get the best results. For me to be successful, you have to move your own objectives, and that's why it's a very special breed of people who can manage an in-house team within a large company. Because I was way more popular with my friends and families when I was the head of advertising for Swatch than when I was a corporate marketing, one of the 200 corporate marketers at P&G, which is really a low-profile job, which is really something that your sense of achievement comes from being able to move the needle a little bit like that. Because you need to have way more influencing skills than what you have on the agency side. On the agency side, at some point, you're never the decision maker. Whereas on the client side, you are the decision maker. So if you don't get the results you wanted, it's on you. You're the last one. The buck stops here.
With the current climate, with the pandemic, would you see that the trend would be more people like yourself moving into larger clients?
Well, I see the skills will be required. The ability to maneuver big brands in big regions is not something you learn in a couple of days. And even if you're in a hyper growth environment in a startup, you need to be able to find the right resources, convince external, internal stakeholders. All of that is part of what in-house managers or leaders should bring to the party. And you also need to have a very good understanding of the marketing ecosystem. At the end of the day, the one thing you learn when you move to the client side is that the only thing that matters are the business results. So when we discuss KPI, there's always a huge gap between what I discussed when I was on the agency side and what I was living through when I was on the client side. The other thing is that when you work internally as an in-house agency, you do very little creative work, for instance. You do very little advertising work. You do a lot of marketing work, but you do a lot of project management as well. So you have to be comfortable with that. It is not always a shiny object. Managing the communication of the brand is a lot of process. It's not always a creative endeavor. It is a business. So you manage a small team and you have different KPIs and you have project deadlines. I've never seen a marketer miss a deadline, whereas agencies can miss a deadline. It's not their funds which are on the line. The marketer cannot. So you work constantly towards the deadline, and you have to get your team to deliver with those deadlines and with the constraints of the company. One of the discussions I'm having with a lot of companies these days is, what do I do when my budget is cut in half? So when you're the marketer, that's what you have to deal with. It's very hard to go back to the agency and tell them, cut the contract in half. But when you manage your team internally in-house and you know exactly who's on the payroll and you know exactly what's your headcount, you have done your business planning for the year. So you can maneuver that in a way that is way more flexible. but it's also much harder because you're dealing with people. You're not only dealing with systems.
Dominique, thank you. That's fantastic insights. Really appreciate your time, and speak to you soon.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.